Listening or reading, which is better? Hello and welcome. Welcome to Input English. In this episode, I'd like to compare and contrast the different types of input available to us as language learners. Of course, videos are for listening, but the video track frequently makes the audio much more comprehensible and frequently much more interesting. So we like videos a lot. When you listen to comprehensible input content, what do you get? Well, you get the sounds of the words, but you get the sounds that make up the words, the phonemes, the little bits of sound that each speaker uses to pronounce each word, the building blocks of pronunciation. And they are distinct with each different language. So it's important to not only learn the vocabulary and the grammar, but if you're going to pronounce the words correctly and be understood, you need a catalog of phonemes in your brain so that you can say the words in a fashion that is recognizable by people who are listening. It needs to be fairly similar to a native pronunciation. I'm not trying to get rid of all accents. I'm just saying we need excellent pronunciation if we want to be understood. So the first thing you get by listening is the set of phonemes that are characteristic of the target language. Of course, you get vocabulary input, you get grammar because everything's in context, everything is in some sort of sentence form, and so you get a pretty good representation of grammar and vocabulary, but all of this is in context. In addition to the phonemes, grammar, and vocabulary, you also get the rhythm of the language and the intonation of the language. There are many ways to say different words, and depending upon the intonation you use to pronounce a word, you may change its meaning quite a lot. I could say, what? Or what? Or what? And those were three different meanings with that one word. You get that in particular with videos because you get the facial expressions and gestures that come with these types of pronunciation. So for language learning, videos are fabulous. The obvious disadvantage is they lock you into a device. Your eyes need to be affixed to a screen, and you need to be centered on that screen. And so that prevents you from using videos in settings where that would not work. For instance, driving a car. Audios give you much the same as videos, but you lose the visual cues. You lose the gestures. But the advantage of audio only is pretty obvious. That frees up your eyes so that you can do other things with your eyes, again, like driving a car. For many of us, the beginning of a new language is on videos so that the video feed makes the audio more understandable. And then after hundreds of hours of videos, we know enough that we can go to an audio-only format, and that opens up the availability of things like podcasts. Podcasts open up the availability of blocks of time that can't be used on video, such as, again, driving the car, or perhaps riding on public transit. Things where watching a video might be impractical or inappropriate. What you do not get with listening is spelling. You don't get any idea of how these words are spelled. And so if you want to be not only fluent in a language, but also literate in that language, that is, being able to read and write that language, then you need some printed material. And so that's where we get into reading. Reading is a different experience than listening because reading doesn't give you the phonemes. You have to provide them yourself from your own catalog of phonemes. There are several advantages of reading in your target language. One, vocabulary, or perhaps I should say vocabularies in the plural, because really you can talk about your vocabulary, but when you get into different fields, different subject matter, each subject matter may have its own vocabulary. You could construe that there is a vocabulary of the life sciences. There is a vocabulary associated with astronomy. When you start reading in your target language, you get access to a lot of different vocabulary, and since it is presented to you in context, you can learn it in context and it can become yours. We're now seeing a difference between reading and listening. They're really apples and oranges. When I say something is apples and oranges, or we are comparing apples and oranges, I'm celebrating the distinct differences between the two and suggesting that maybe direct comparison of the two isn't reasonable. You can't say that one is better than the other any more than you can say an apple is better than an orange. So that figure of speech, apples and oranges, you will hear in English. As a language learner, I look to listening content as a way of working on pronunciation and developing a mental image for how the language sounds, including rhythm and intonation, so that when I produce language, I do so in a fashion more similar to normal native pronunciation and speech patterns. You get that benefit from listening. With reading, I think in terms of building vocabulary. Studies of people in their native language show a strong correlation between reading behavior and the size of the person's vocabulary. Reading behavior also correlates well with success in various endeavors. There is a compliment in English that is often given. If you approve of someone because of their knowledge, you might say that they are well read. That is a metaphor for somebody who's quite knowledgeable, recognizing the benefits of extensive reading. Reading also gives you heightened enjoyment of your new language because it opens up an opportunity to enjoy the literature of that language. The English language has a vast literature, and it is quite a joy to explore those works of literature in English. Your ability to read and understand English will heighten your enjoyment of your learning process. There are two ways to hybridize reading and listening. One is through audiobooks. It's not a true hybridization, but it gives you access to literature in a listening form, and so that allows you to get more of the benefits of listening while you get the benefits of literature, building vocabulary, and building your enjoyment. I make extensive use of audiobooks. I use the term hybridization. This is a term that comes out of the life sciences. If you take an individual of one strain and an individual of another strain and cross those two to produce an offspring, you have created a hybrid. Hybrids don't simply have an arithmetic result of these two strains added together and averaged. No, frequently hybrids are stronger, healthier, bigger, and more desirable in agriculture. So much of agriculture uses hybrids. So if we step away from the life sciences and agriculture into language learning, if I say I'm hybridizing these methods, then I'm saying I'm taking some aspects of reading and some aspects of listening and putting them together. Aristotle coined a term that the whole may be greater than the sum of its parts. That's a great way to describe many hybrids. They are better than just an average of their constituents. There are several ways of doing a hybrid reading listening program. One is to get an audiobook and the printed version of the same book, and while you play the audio track, follow along in the text. I've done this. It works. There are some content creators for language learning who provide that in an easily available form. I direct your attention to Ollie Richards and his stories. His stories are typically available in a print form and an audio form, and so doing that hybridization of technique works easily with his material. There is an app that I've mentioned in other videos created by Steve Kaufman out of Vancouver. The app is called Link, L-I-N-G-Q, and his website is link.com, Lingq.com. This app is affordable, it's robust, and he has many different language options. He has English. He has a lot of content. His site curates content for language learners, and it gives you stratification as to what level each bit of content is, so that you can go through that app and seek content that's appropriate to your level of listening comprehension or reading ability. His app has a lot of good features, and I have used it extensively in my study of Spanish. His app allows you to do hybrid reading and listening very easily. To do so, you bring up the app, you bring up the content that you would like to go through, and I typically put the text in sentence form and then play the audio and follow through the sentence word for word. Just follow it as this is spoken, and then you can stop it, you can repeat it, you can do anything you want to better understand it. When I have used Link for learning Spanish, what I typically do is listen to it first, just plain audio, no text. And then, having completed that, I may listen to it again as an audio. I may download it to my phone and listen to it while I'm driving the car. But then later, I will bring it up onto the screen of my tablet, put it into sentence mode perhaps, play the audio, and follow it along. This also gives you an opportunity, if you want, to pause it and read that same sentence aloud, pronouncing it the way you choose to. And then you can replay the audio and you can do a direct comparison between your pronunciation and the native pronunciation. This technique has been much described on the internet. This is shadowing. This shadowing technique that I've just described is an excellent way to start the transition from a program that is centered entirely on input to a phase in your learning where output is prominently represented. From reviewing the comments in the comments section for this channel, it becomes very clear that people who use this channel for input represent all the different levels of proficiency with the English language. We have people viewing these videos who are early in their journey and are watching these videos during their first several hundred hours of input. Other viewers of these videos have been speaking English for decades and simply want to improve their pronunciation. So, given that tremendous diversity of our audience, it would be folly for me to be prescriptive and tell you what you need to do. I learned that a long time ago. This channel must not be prescriptive. On the other hand, I don't want to be wishy-washy about things, and sometimes people need some guidance. So, depending upon your level of proficiency in English, you probably would benefit from lots more listening input, because that will help you refine your pronunciation and make your speech clearer. So that's a clear recommendation. Get more listening input. The next thing is, irrespective of your level of proficiency with English, additional vocabulary would certainly be beneficial. And so that would be a strong argument for more reading, lots more reading. And then each of us needs to find in this learning process what gives us joy. So if you find that you love audiobooks, then you should listen to lots of audiobooks. If you find that you like the texture and the feel of pages and you like reading physical books, then you should read physical books. I just encourage people to get lots and lots of input. Indeed, listening and reading are related because they're both input, but they give you distinctly different parts of the language, and they work best if you do both, either at the same time or at different times. So that's the end of this episode. I hope you enjoyed it. I invite comments below, and I hope you join us in future videos. See you soon.